If the nights are starting to get really long, maybe a long book series won't make it seem as daunting. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through some of my favourite longer book series. I like to read a lot of trilogies, so series with just 3 books in them, but there are also a couple of books that I have read that have 4 or higher number of books in them, and I have loved them. They've been such a great escape from like dreary weather or a little bit of a dip in my mental health, or I just need something to escape into. I genuinely think that all of these book series are going to be perfect for curling up on the couch. Maybe you have a hot drink beside you, maybe you have like a roaring fire or the fire sound on Netflix beside you. I think these are such a great way to spend some evenings in the winter. Let us start with a little bit of kind of travel-based escapism. This is the iHeart series by Lindsay Kelk. This series has 8 books in it, and there's also 2 novellas that are following one of the side characters. The main character that you are following here is Angela Clark, who escapes to New York after finding her boyfriend in the backseat of a car with somebody else at their best friend's wedding. Angela goes to New York and she basically reinvents herself. She gets a whole new career, she makes a whole new bunch of friends, she finds love again, she builds a family, she builds foundations for herself. I really love following Angela through the streets of New York, or walking down Hollywood Boulevard, or strolling through the Strip in Las Vegas, because there are a couple of other places around the world that Angela escapes to as well. I love these books. These are really, truly escapism, but I will say a couple of them don't really age as well. There are a couple of instances of slut shaming, there are a couple of instances of fat shaming. There's some language that's used in these books that I don't truly stand with as much anymore, but as a whole, this series really works for me. If the idea of escaping through travel is kind of doing something for you, but you don't want to try these books out, I would also recommend the Romantic Escape series by Julie Kaplan. As of filming today, there are 10 books in this series, so there is genuinely going to be one for you. They take place pretty much across the world, and I genuinely mean that. We are stretching the entirety of the globe. There's New York, Copenhagen, Scotland, Ireland, which was very impressive to me. There is Tokyo, Iceland, Croatia. There's a couple of others that I know I have forgotten about in here, but I absolutely love the idea that I can travel around the world, that I can see all of these exciting places that right now I don't have the money for, right now I don't have the time budget for, but I can do it all from the comfort of my couch. I don't have to save up for a hotel, I don't have to book a flight, I don't have to get any vaccinations. I can just open the pages of the book and go. There are some connections with characters throughout the books, so you will see one of the characters from the group that goes to a patisserie in Copenhagen. You will see them in Paris, or you might see a side character who was working in a bakery in Paris who is now setting up their own shop in Brooklyn. You might see a sister of one of the characters in Croatia. You might see her opening a B&B in Ireland. I really love the kind of interconnection that some worlds have in their book series. And I really, really love continuing on a character story when you've just gotten to know them in this book and now you're finding out a whole lot more about them. Something that for me is a little bit closer to home is the Walsh Sisters series by Marion Keyes. This is Watermelon. It is not only the first book in the series, but it is also Marion's debut book herself. This one follows Claire, who has just given birth to her and her husband's daughter, and he leaves her pretty much as soon as the baby has been delivered. Claire then goes through the upheaval of being a single mother. She moves back to her family home in Dublin. She kind of moves in with 2 of her younger sisters and her mother, who is completely batshit insane, and her dad, who just has his best intentions out for everyone. I absolutely love this series. This one, however, is not my favourite of the series. My favourite of the series is Rachel's Holiday, which follows the 3rd oldest sister, so the middle sister, Rachel, who is now back in rehab, having been kind of on a bender for about a week and a half. Her family intervene and bring her back to Dublin and put her into a rehab centre for a couple of weeks to kind of get herself back on track. The books also deal with a couple of really tough topics. Some of them deal with grief and bereavement, some of them deal with divorce, some of them have dealt with mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. All of these books are so engaging to me, and they're also quite chunky. I think this one is at least 550 pages, so they are definitely great escapism for you to actually sink your teeth into a long book with a long series behind it. Another one that's really close to home for me is the Oh My God, What a Complete Ashling series by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysett. The fifth and final book, Ashling Ever After, has just come out at the end of August this year, and I haven't actually gotten to it yet because I don't want to say goodbye. I know so many people who have said it's such a bittersweet book in that it is a great way to finish the series, but you're finishing the series. This book follows Ashling, who is a quintessential country girl in Ireland. She lives in Dublin, she's working in Dublin, but she comes back home to her parents every single weekend. She plays on her local sports team, her boyfriend plays on their local sports team. She is, I think, working in finance or insurance. In the first book, Ashling and her boyfriend John go to Tenerife, and Ashling is expecting to come back with a big ring on her finger. When that does not happen, Ashling's life goes down a whole different path that she was never expecting her life to go down. I absolutely love Ashling. There are a lot of aspects of her life that I really associate with. I am also the person who brings their lunch into work with a big brown Thomas bag so that I look really important. I'm the kind of person who will put the high heels into my handbag and then change into them when I get to the venue because it's way too uncomfortable to walk in them getting there. Ashling is a special character to me. There's a lot of things that have happened in her life that were happening at mine as I was reading them simultaneously. So I feel like she is one of my closest connections as a character in the book world, and I'm really not prepared to say goodbye yet. If you fancy going a little bit further from home, and you want something that's a little bit more fantastical, I would definitely recommend trying out the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. These were translated from the original Japanese, and they are set in a tiny little cafe in one of the back streets of Tokyo. This is a cafe with a difference though. Here you can come in, you can order a coffee, and if you sit in a specific chair, you can travel in time to visit somebody who has already been to the cafe. There are a couple of other stipulations here though. The person obviously has to have been to the coffee shop before, and you can only stay for a certain amount of time. You have to return to the present before the coffee that you ordered has gotten cold, or there are some pretty devastating consequences for you. Also, there is a ghost that inhabits this cafe. They sit in that chair for a pretty sizable chunk of the day. They get up for like a 10 or 15 minute stint once a day to go to the bathroom, and that is your only chance to strike. In the third, and I think also in the fourth book, which has just come out, there is actually a different cafe that we're discovering, different ghost, completely same set of rules. And it was so interesting to see it in a different system, in a different setup with different people in charge as well. I absolutely love this series, but I would recommend bringing tissues with you when you read it because some of the stories in here are genuinely heartbreaking. The chapters are not super long either. There's usually about 4 stories in each of the books, and they're about 50 to 75 pages each. Super easy to get through it just after work or when you've just sat down for half an hour to read. If you've got like a half an hour free in your day, this is definitely one to pick up. A longer series that is more dedicated to younger readers is the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, and this is perfect for reading in the middle of winter when it's a little bit cold, when it's a little bit dreary, when the days are super grey and depressing. Pick up Heartstopper. This series is about Nick and Charlie, who are 2 senior boys in a secondary school in the UK. I think Nick is a year older than Charlie is. Charlie and Nick meet on the rugby team. Charlie has been kind of recruited because he has been proven to be a really fast runner, and that's what the team needs at the moment. What occurs then is Charlie and Nick start to fall for each other. Nick starts to question his sexuality because up until now, he's only been interested in girls, he has only gone out with girls, he's only kissed a girl, and now he's feeling something for another guy. There are 4 books out at the moment. The 5th one is coming out in November, and we have been promised one more, a final 6th installment. But also there is the This Winter novella, which kind of breaches between the 3rd and 4th books, I think. I think that's the area that this one is set in. I absolutely love these. They are a complete hug in a book, but there are some things that you might want to be prepared for when you're going into them. The books do also deal with homophobia, obviously, because not everyone in the book is as welcoming to Nick and Charlie's relationship as you would hope they would be. There are some instances of an eating disorder. There are some instances of anxiety and mental health struggles. If you can get past those, if that's something that you think you can read, I definitely recommend to pick up these books. Another super long series for teenage readers is the Princess Diaries series by Meg Cabot. And when I tell you I ate these up whole as a teenager, I did not stop to take in a breath when I ate these up. The book series has 10 canon novels. There's also The Royal Wedding, which is the 11th book in the series, and there are 2, I think, novellas following a family member of Princess Miy. There's also the Quarantine Diaries, which are kind of a collection of Princess Mia's thoughts while being in Genovia during the pandemic. So, who's Princess Miy? Miy Thermopolis is 14 years old at the start of the series. She was brought up in New York, her parents are separated, and one day she finds out that she is actually the heir to a tiny European principality. This is something that throws her life into a complete spin, because now, instead of worrying about her algebra score, she's now worried about what the proper etiquette is when you're meeting other heads of state. She's worried about how do you know what a soup spoon looks like in comparison to a dessert spoon, what is the difference between the two of them. Miy and I also have got things in common. We both have very uncontrollable hair. Both of us have a parent who is a maths teacher, even though our mathematical ability is less than 0. Miy and I are both cat parents. I've had cats for quite a lot of my life. Miy is the mother of Fat Louie, who is probably the biggest cat you've ever experienced. I absolutely loved these books. There are some things that, of course, don't always age well because they were written in the late 90s to the early noughties. But overall, this book series just transports me straight back to when I was younger. Another series that brings me absolutely screaming back to my teenage years is The Diaries of Georgia Nicholson by Louise Renison. I would absolutely love to see what Georgia is doing as an adult, but unfortunately Louise passed away in 2016 due to breast cancer. So it's something that I don't think we're ever going to see, but I would love to know what Georgia's doing. Georgia Nicholson is chaos embodied, I think. Georgia is about 14 or 15 at the start of the book. She has a group of friends that she calls the Ace Gang, and they have a kind of a sliding scale for how far you've gotten with a guy. The language that they use in that is absolutely bonkers. Some of the slang that the group has over the course of the book is absolutely bonkers, but I absolutely love the friendship between Georgia and her friends. I think Dave the Laugh is going to be my forever book boyfriend, and if Dave the Laugh was ever brought to life in person, hands down, that's it. However, there are a couple of things about this book that have not exactly aged well. If you were a teenager in the 2000s, you'll probably know some of the thoughts or some of the ideas that Georgia would have had in her head, such as fat shaming, such as slut shaming. These ideas were pretty rife in teenage magazines back in the noughties, so it's not completely unheard of that Georgia would have some of those kind of sink in as well. But overall, this is such a wonderful book series about friendship, about relationships, about first kisses, about crushes. I absolutely love reading them. Another kind of long series for teenagers is the Noughts and Crosses series by Miy Blackman. This book doesn't require as much of a commitment because it only has 5 books in the series, but it really does hit hard. Every single one of these will genuinely leave you with your jaw dropped. This series is set in a world where society is kind of thrown on its head. In this world, white people are the oppressed, while people of colour are the oppressors. And in book 1, Sephy, who is a black girl, and Callum, who is a white boy, come together. They have been friends since they were young, but they have been separated now due to segregation, and they come back together as they are about 15 or 16, and they start a relationship together. Of course, this is a very kind of Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers situation, and I genuinely loved reading this book. It is so gripping, it is so enthralling. It's really interesting to see a completely different society, but still with all of the struggles that we have these days, still with the racial segregation, still with the discrimination that people are going through, just in a completely different lens. As I said, there are 5 books in this series, and they all follow different main characters. Some of them will follow Callie Rose, who is Callum and Sephy's daughter. Some of them follow Sephy as the main character. I genuinely think that this should be in every single school library. Another book series with a kind of an alternate reality is the American Royal series by Katherine McGee. As of now, there are 4 books in this series, and the 4th one, Rivals, has just come out this year. This book is set in a fictional imagining of the United States of America. After the War of Independence, after the Declaration of Independence was signed, instead of becoming a president, George Washington becomes a king. He's given a crown and he's given the monarchy. Now, about 200 years later, America is preparing itself for its first ever queen regnant, as Beatrice is the first in line to the throne, and she's the first ever woman heir apparent to be so. Over the books, you follow Beatrice as she is preparing to become queen, as she becomes queen, and the situations and the relationships between her and her sister Sam, who is kind of seen as the next heir to the throne, and her brother Jefferson, who is seen as like the spare. But there's also a lot of relationships that they have outside of this. There are a couple of friendships in here that I really love reading about. For example, the one between Nina and Samantha. But there's also some really interesting romantic twists in here. You have got Daphne, who is prepared to do anything possible to get her hands on a crown. You have got Nina, Sam's friend, who genuinely just wants to spend some time with the person that she loves. And you also have got a little bit of a love triangle involving both sisters. However, if you are looking for a series that it goes even younger in age, I would definitely recommend checking out the Babysitters Club series. And this is my go-to comfort series. There are 131 canon books just in the straight series alone. Then you have the summer specials. Then you have the mystery specials. There are probably about 400 or 500 books in this series to this day. They follow 7 young teenagers in the fictional town of Stony Brook in Connecticut, and they have set up a babysitting business in the town. Christy, who is the president of the Babysitters Club, notices one day that her mother is struggling to find somebody to take care of David Michael, Christy's younger brother, and has this brainwave that what if you could ring one phone number and you get access to 7 different babysitters? One of them is bound to be free when you need them. So the Babysitters Club is born. 7 of the girls come together every week and they take on calls and they take on clients. And there is also quite a lot to discuss from these books. This book series was the first time that I ever heard of diabetes, which my grandfather then turned out to be diagnosed with a couple of years later. You also have books that deal with racism, with disabilities, with bereavement. There's so much happening in this one series alone that there's no reason that you cannot find a book for you in it. My final recommendation is a kind of a cozy mystery series. Perfect for this time of year, for just lounging on the couch and getting cozy. This is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is actually the second book in the series, The Man Who Died Twice, and the 4th book has just come out at the start of September, I think, this year. This book follows the Thursday Murder Club, a group made up of 4 octogenarians who live in an old folks home in Cooper's Chase, and they get together every Thursday in the jigsaw room and solve open mysteries. However, they never expected that they would have to solve a murder in their own town. Then you are taken on this massive journey of trying to put all of the clues together, trying to find out who did what and why they did it and where. I love the little intricacies, but I also love these characters so much. They are going to burrow their way into your hearts and absolutely steadfastly stay there for the rest of your life. Joyce is probably the best character I've read so far this year. I absolutely love this series so far. I have got the 3rd and 4th books that I still need to get read, but I feel like these are the perfect atmospheric read for like October, November, when the days are getting cold, when the days are getting a little bit darker and chillier and creepier. It's definitely time to read a murder mystery, right? Those are just some of the really long book series that I think you should go and check out. What is the longest book series that is on your shelf and how many books are in it? If you'd love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the arrow that has 2 ends pointing out. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.